My sister Juliet demanded I babysit her 3 unruly children while she lounged in the luxury villa I fully financed. When I refused, Mom called me immature, and they kicked me out. So I canceled the booking, stranded them without funds, and watched their paradise burn. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The sound of the heavy oak door slamming shut didn't just echo through the humid tropical air. It vibrated in the hollow of my chest. I stood there, staring at the intricate wood carving of the villa I had paid for, feeling the heat radiating off the stone pavement through the soles of my sandals. Beside me, my suitcase, the one I hadn't even fully unpacked yet, sat tipped over in the dust, looking as discarded and pathetic as I felt. My hands were shaking. Not a subtle tremble, but a violent, uncontrollable shiver that made it difficult to even reach into my purse for my phone. It wasn't the heat. It was the shock. It was the physical manifestation of a reality my brain was refusing to accept. 5 minutes ago, I was the benevolent benefactor, the successful daughter treating her family to the vacation of a lifetime. Now, I was a trespasser, an outcast. I could still hear them inside. I could hear the muffled sound of Juliet's laughter, a high-pitched, triumphant sound that used to make me smile when we were children, but now sounded like fingernails on a chalkboard. I heard the splash of water. Someone had just jumped into the infinity pool. The infinity pool that cost an extra $2,000 to heat. The pool I had envisioned us all floating in, cocktails in hand, finally bonding after years of distance. "I can't believe she actually left," I heard Derek, my brother-in-law, say. His voice was loud, carrying through the open windows of the second floor. "Do you think she'll come back begging?" "Give her an hour," my mother, Martha's voice floated out, dripping with that familiar, sickly sweet poison she disguised as maternal wisdom. "Ava has always been dramatic. Once she realizes she has nowhere else to go and cools off, she'll be back to help with dinner. She knows she needs to apologize for ruining the mood." I gripped the handle of my suitcase, my knuckles turning white. Ruining the mood? I had just spent 45 minutes being berated, told I was selfish, and essentially demoted to hired help in a house that wouldn't have been accessible to them in their wildest dreams without my bank account. I felt bile rise in my throat. I was 34 years old. I was a director of operations for a logistics firm. I managed multi-million-dollar supply chains. I commanded respect in boardrooms filled with men twice my age. And yet, here, on the doorstep of paradise, I was reduced to a naughty child being sent to timeout. But the worst part wasn't the insult. The worst part was the absolute certainty in their voices. They truly believed I would come back. They believed I was so desperate for their approval, so starved for a scrap of familial affection, that I would swallow my pride, walk back through those doors, and strap on an apron while they sipped the vintage wine I had shipped in. I looked down at my phone. The screen was blurry through the tears I hadn't realized were falling. I wiped my face aggressively, smearing my mascara. I took a deep, ragged breath, inhaling the scent of hibiscus and sea salt, mixing with the metallic tang of my own adrenaline. They thought I was powerless. They thought I was just Ava, the quiet one, the wallet, the fixer. They thought this was the end of the argument. I unlocked my phone and opened the email confirmation for the villa. The reservation number stared back at me. "No," I whispered to the closed door, my voice cracking before finding a steely edge I hadn't heard in years. "I'm not coming back to cook dinner." The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. It was an amputation of the heart, swift and brutal. I dragged my suitcase away from the main entrance, the wheels rumbling loudly over the cobblestones. I needed to get out of earshot. I needed to think. I found a small stone bench near the perimeter of the property, hidden behind a dense wall of bougainvillea. I collapsed onto it, my legs finally giving out. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple, a breathtaking backdrop for the worst day of my life. I closed my eyes and replayed the last hour, trying to pinpoint the exact moment the dream had turned into a nightmare. We had arrived in a convoy of taxis. The excitement had been palpable. Tristan, my 15-year-old nephew, had been glued to his phone, but even he looked up and whistled when the villa came into view. It was a sprawling, white stone palace perched on a cliffside overlooking turquoise ocean. Wow, Juliet had breathed, clutching Derek's arm. Ava, you really outdid yourself. For a fleeting second, I had felt a warmth blossom in my chest. See, I told myself, this is worth it. They appreciate it. We're going to be a normal, happy family. That illusion lasted exactly until we walked through the front doors. The concierge, a polite man named Matteo, had handed me the keys. Welcome, Ms. Ava. As requested, the master suite is prepared, along with the 3 guest suites. Before I could even reach for the master key, the room I had specifically booked for myself, because it had the soaking tub I had been dreaming about for 6 months, Juliet snatched the ring from Matteo's hand. Oh, perfect, Juliet exclaimed, marching toward the grand staircase. Derek and I will take the master. Obviously. We need the space for the baby's crib, and honestly, we just need the privacy more. I froze. Juliet, wait, I booked the master for myself. Well, I paid for it. She stopped on the 3rd step and turned around, looking down at me with a bewildered expression, as if I had just spoken in tongues. Ava, don't be ridiculous. You're single. Why on earth would you need a king-sized bed and a double vanity? Derek and I are a couple. We have children. It just makes sense for the family unit to have the main suite. I looked at Mom for support. Martha was busy inspecting a vase, but she looked up, her expression mild. Juliet is right, Ava. It's just logistics. Don't be selfish. You can take the garden room. The garden room was lovely, but it was the smallest room, located on the ground floor near the kitchen. It was meant for a nanny or a traveling assistant. But I started, my voice failing me. And besides, Juliet continued, continuing her ascent, Tristan and the girls will need the other 2 suites upstairs so we can keep an eye on them. You'll be much happier downstairs. It's quieter. And closer to the kitchen, which is good since you'll be up early. Why will I be up early? I asked, a cold dread pooling in my stomach. Juliet laughed, a light, airy sound. To get breakfast started for the kids, silly. You know Derek and I aren't morning people, and Mom needs her rest. We figured since you're used to that high-stress job, you're up at dawn anyway. It's perfect. You handle the mornings and the kids during the day, and we get a chance to actually relax. That's the whole point of a vacation, right? I sat there on the bench, the memory stinging like a fresh slap. They hadn't come here to vacation with me. They had come here to vacation off of me. I was the financier and the staff, rolled into one convenient package. I pulled my phone out again. I had 3 missed calls from a local number, probably the taxi company I had tried to hail earlier before the signal cut out. But then a text popped up from Derek. Derek, stop being a brat. Your mom is upset. Come back, apologize, and make some snacks. The kids are hungry. I stared at the screen, hungry. My finger hovered over the reply button. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to type out every curse word I knew. I wanted to list every dollar I had spent, every sacrifice I had made. But then, a different thought occurred to me. A cold, calculating thought that felt much more like the director of operations than the little sister. I looked at the villa reservation app on my phone. The status bar glowed green, checked in. Below it, a button read, Manage Guests and Access. And below that, the credit card on file. My credit card. The platinum card that was currently authorized for all incidentals, all room service, all excursions, and the hefty security deposit. They thought the villa was theirs because they were inside it. They thought the power dynamic was settled because they had the keys and the master suite. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. Possession is 9/10 of the law, but the person who signs the check owns the reality. To understand why this hurt so much, you have to understand the history. I haven't just been the successful sister my whole life, I've been the compensation prize. Juliet, 5 years older than me at 39, was the miracle baby, the golden child. She was beautiful, charismatic, and fragile. She floated through life on a cloud of good intentions and poor execution. She had tried acting, then fashion design, then lifestyle curation. None of it stuck. Eventually, her career became being a mother. And don't get me wrong, being a mother is hard work. I respect it. But Juliet didn't just mother, she martyred. She wielded her children, Tristan, 15, Sophie, 8, and the toddler, Leo, like shields against any form of criticism or responsibility. Then there was Mom. Martha, 64, a retired school administrator who ran our family with the same arbitrary favoritism she probably used in her classrooms. In her eyes, Juliet was the one who needed protection and help because she was sensitive and overwhelmed. I, on the other hand, was strong. I was capable. Ava can handle it became the family motto. When Dad died, I handled the funeral arrangements while Juliet wept in her room. When Mom needed her roof fixed, I handled the contractors and the bill because Juliet couldn't possibly spare the funds right now. I became an architect of my own isolation. I worked 80-hour weeks, climbing the ladder at the logistics firm, driven by a desperate need to prove that I was worthy of their attention. I thought if I just became successful enough, generous enough, they would finally look at me and say, "Wow, Ava, thank you, we love you." This trip was supposed to be the culmination of that effort. "Let's go to St. Bart's," I had suggested 6 months ago. "My treat, everything, flights, the villa, the food, I just want us to be together." I spent $25,000. That's a down payment on a house in some places. I curated the itinerary. I arranged for a private chef for 3 nights, ironic, considering they expected me to cook. I even bought Tristan a new iPad for the flight so he wouldn't be bored. And then the mask slipped. I remembered the conversation in the kitchen right before I was ousted. I had followed them in, dragging my suitcase. "I am not cooking breakfast, Juliet, and I am not watching the kids while you go to the spa. I booked those treatments for us to go together." Juliet had turned to me, holding a glass of champagne she had just popped from the welcome basket. Her eyes were wide and innocent, but her mouth was hard. "Ava, don't be selfish. You don't have kids. You don't understand the exhaustion. You have a quiet life. This is your chance to contribute to the family in a way that actually matters. Money is nice, sure, but time is love." "I am not your helper," I had said, my voice trembling. That's when Martha stepped in. She was sitting at the island, peeling an orange for Leo. She didn't even look up. "Maybe when you mature, Ava, and have a family of your own, you can join us as an equal. Until then, you should be grateful we're letting you be part of the children's memories. If you're going to stand there and tally up costs, you're ruining the spirit of the trip." "I paid for the trip, Mom," I snapped. "And that's why you think you can control us," Derek chimed in, leaning against the fridge. He was a salesman for a mid-tier paper company, a man whose primary talent was avoiding work while looking busy. He smirked at me. "Look, Ava, if you're going to bring this toxic energy, maybe you should just go for a walk, or leave. We don't need the negativity." "Yeah," Juliet added, sipping her champagne. "If you aren't going to help, then get out. We don't want you here stressing everyone out." She looked me dead in the eye. The sister I had worshipped. The sister I had bought a car for when hers broke down 2 years ago. "Get out," she repeated. It was the entitlement that broke me. The absolute, unshakable belief that my resources were their birthright, but my presence was conditional on my servitude. I sat on the bench, the sun now fully gone, leaving the sky a bruised purple. I looked at the villa one last time. It glowed warmly in the night, a beacon of luxury. I saw a shadow move in the upstairs window. Tristan, probably, looking for a signal. They were comfortable. They were settled. They were drinking my champagne and sleeping in my sheets. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for the exclusive property management concierge, the 24-hour platinum line. "Good evening, Ms. Ava. the voice answered on the first ring. How is the villa? Is everything to your satisfaction? Actually, Matteo, I said, my voice steady and cold as the ocean breeze. There's been a change of plans. I need to report a security issue regarding unauthorized guests at the property. Unauthorized guests? Matteo repeated, his professional calm fracturing just slightly. Ms. Ava, are you saying you are not currently on the premises? That is correct, I said, watching a small gecko dart across the pavement near my feet. The trembling in my hands had stopped, replaced by a cold, vibrating clarity. This was a sensation I knew well from work, the moment a logistics chain collapsed and I had to reroute everything. It wasn't panic, it was pure execution. I have left the property due to a dispute. The reservation is in my name. The credit card on file is mine. And the individuals remaining in the villa, Juliet, Derek, Martha, and the children, are not authorized to use the facilities or incur any charges without my physical presence. There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear the faint tapping of a keyboard. I see, Matteo said, his voice dropping an octave. This is highly irregular. The policy states that the primary cardholder must be present for the all-inclusive luxury package to remain active, if you are not there to sign for the incidentals. Then they are liable for them, I finished for him. However, I know for a fact they do not have the funds to cover the security hold on a property of that magnitude. Matteo, I want to be clear. I am not canceling the reservation yet. I am simply freezing the assets. I want you to remove my card from the active file immediately. Do not authorize a single bottle of water, a towel service, or a pool heating charge to my account starting now. Understood, he said, and the guests? They have been asked to leave, I lied, well, partially. They had asked me to leave. If they wish to stay, they will need to provide their own method of payment for the remainder of the booking, plus the security deposit. Tonight. I will head up there personally, Matteo said. I am sorry your vacation has taken this turn, Ms. Ava. Me too, I whispered. I hung up and called a cab. 20 minutes later, I was checking into a boutique hotel 3 miles down the coast. It wasn't a palace, but it was quiet, clean, and, most importantly, mine. Once I was in the room, I opened my laptop. The investigation phase of my plan began not with looking at the villa, but looking at them. The way Juliet and Derek had acted, the sheer audacity of kicking me out of a house I paid for, didn't make sense if it was just simple entitlement. It felt desperate. It felt like a coup. I logged into my bank portal. The supplementary card I had given Juliet for emergencies regarding the kids was the first thing I checked. I hadn't looked closely at it in months because the bill was on autopay, a mistake I now regretted. I scrolled through the history. Grocery store, $400. Okay, fine. Liquor World, $250. Excessive. Baby Boutique, $600. For a toddler. But then I saw it. A charge from 3 weeks ago. Travel insurance, cancel for any reason policy. And another. Lux Luggage Co. $1,200. I frowned. They had bought expensive luggage and cancellation insurance using my money. But why buy insurance for a trip I was paying for? I dug deeper. I pulled up Juliet's social media. She had been posting nonstop for the last 24 hours. The photos were captioned with phrases like, "Finally living the life we deserve," and "New beginnings in paradise." One comment from a friend caught my eye. "So glad you guys got out of that apartment. Good luck with the move." The move. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the hotel's air conditioning. I navigated to the county clerk's website for our hometown, a trick I used when vetting vendors for work. I searched for Juliet and Derek's address. Notice of eviction filed 30 days ago. Status executed. My mouth fell open. They hadn't just come on vacation. They were homeless. They had been evicted. They had packed up their entire lives into those Lux Luggage suitcases, come here on my dime, and kicked me out because they needed the villa to be their temporary home while they figured out their next move. They weren't planning on leaving in a week. They were planning on squatting, and they needed me gone so I wouldn't notice they had nowhere to return to. I sat back, the glow of the laptop screen illuminating my stunned face. They were going to use me as a bridge to their next scam. But you forgot one thing, I whispered to the empty room, a dark smile tugging at my lips. I control the bridge. The next morning, I woke up to 47 missed calls and a string of texts that escalated from confused to apocalyptic. Juliet, 7:00 a.m., where's breakfast? The chef isn't here. Juliet, 7:15 a.m., Ava, stop playing games, the fridge is locked. What did you do? Derek, 7:30 a.m., the power to the pool is off, it's freezing, fix it. Martha, 7:45 a.m., this is childish, Ava, come back immediately, we are starving. Juliet, 8:05 a.m., the manager is here. HES asking for a credit card. Answer your phone. I poured myself a cup of coffee from the in-room machine, walked out onto my small balcony, and watched the ocean. I took a slow sip. Then I dialed Juliet. She picked up on the first ring. What is wrong with you? She screamed. The sound was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. In the background, I could hear Leo crying and Derek shouting at someone, presumably Mateo. Good morning to you too, Juliet, I said, my voice calm, contrasting sharply with her hysteria. I assume Mateo has stopped by. He's trying to kick us out, she shrieked. He says the card on file has been removed. He says we owe $3,000 just for last night and the unauthorized guest fees. Ava, give him the card number right now. This is humiliating. I can't do that, I said, leaning against the railing. What do you mean you can't? You're rich, you paid for this. You can't just invite us here and then pull the rug out because your feelings got hurt. I didn't invite you to kick me out, Juliet. I cut in, my tone sharpening. You told me to get out. You told me I was handling the kids or I could leave. So I left. And since I am the only person on the rental agreement, the amenities left with me. We are family. Martha's voice suddenly came on the line. She must have snatched the phone. Ava, this is your mother. You are putting your sister and her children on the street in a foreign country. Have you no shame? You are acting like a petulant child. Actually, Mom, I said, I'm acting like the bank, and the bank is closed. You are ruining this trip, Derek yelled from the background. My kids are crying, we haven't eaten. Then buy them food, Derek, I said coldly. You're a grown man, surely you have a credit card, put it down for the deposit. It's only a $10,000 hold. There was a silence on the line, a heavy, suffocating silence. We don't have that kind of limit, Juliet whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and fear. And you know that. I do know that, I replied. But here is what I also know. I know you didn't just come here for a vacation. I know about the eviction, Juliet. The silence stretched, tense and brittle. What? She breathed. I know you lost the apartment, I continued, pressing the advantage. I know you have nowhere to go back to. You kicked me out so you could squat in my villa and pretend you hadn't failed. You wanted to live like queens while I slept in the servants' quarters and paid the bills. That's not. Don't lie to me, I snapped, losing my cool for the first time. I saw the court records. You played me, you used me, and now you're stranded. If you know we have nowhere to go, Juliet sobbed, shifting tactics instantly to victimhood, then how can you do this? We'll be homeless, Ava. With a baby, you have to help us. You have to pay for this. I don't have to do anything, I said. You told me I wasn't an equal. You told me I wasn't mature. Well, welcome to the adult world, Juliet. In the adult world, if you can't pay, you don't stay. I hate you, she hissed. I hope you die alone. Better alone than used, I said. Put Mateo on the phone. The hours following that phone call were a blur of high-stakes negotiation, but not with my family. I was negotiating their demolition. I spoke to Mateo again. He confirmed that Derek had tried to offer a debit card, but it had been declined for insufficient funds. They were currently barricaded in the villa, refusing to leave. They are claiming squatters' rights or something similar, Mateo told me, sounding exhausted. The police have been notified, but on the island, these things can take time. They are making a scene, Ms. Ava. Your mother is screaming that you have abandoned them. It is unsightly. I am so sorry, Mateo, I said, feeling a pang of guilt for the staff. I will cover any damages they cause, but under no circumstances are you to let them stay another night on my dime. We have cut the power to the unit, Mateo said grimly, and the water. While the villa siege was happening, I continued building my case. I knew that once they were back in the States, if they ever got back, the narrative would be that I was a monster. I needed proof. I called the landlord of their old apartment. I introduced myself as a reference checker, a gray lie, but necessary. Oh, Juliet and Derek, the landlord scoffed. Good riddance, they owe me 4 months of rent, and tell your friend to watch out, they stripped the place. Copper piping, light fixtures, everything. They sold it all. My stomach turned. They weren't just bad with money, they were criminals. Then I received a notification on my phone. Attempted charge, $4,500, Caribbean Airlines. They were trying to book flights. Using my card number, which they must have written down from a previous time, I'd helped them. I called the fraud department immediately. That charge is unauthorized, I told the agent. Cancel it and flag any further attempts from that merchant. Done, the agent said. Ms. Ava, we see multiple attempts here. One for the airline, one for a luxury car rental, and one for a jewelry store. Block them all, I said. At 2:00 p.m., my phone rang again. It wasn't Juliet. It was Tristan, my nephew. Aunt Ava, his voice was small, scared. My heart broke a little. Tristan was a good kid, just glued to screens and largely ignored by his parents. I'm here, Tristan, I said softly. Mom and Dad are screaming at the police, he whispered. There are guys in uniforms outside. It's really scary. Grandma is crying on the floor. The guy, Mateo, he says we have to leave in 10 minutes or we're getting arrested. I closed my eyes. This was the collateral damage I had wanted to avoid, but they had forced my hand. Tristan, listen to me, I said. Are you packed? Yeah. Okay, I want you to walk out the front door. Don't wait for your parents, just walk to the gate. I'm going to send a car for you, just you. But what about Mom? Your mom needs to learn a lesson, Tristan, but I won't leave. Why? Oh, stranded. I'm booking you a flight home to your other grandma's house, Derek's mom. I already spoke to her. She's waiting for you. Okay, he sniffled. Thank you, Aunt Ava. I love you, kiddo. Now go. I hung up and arranged the transport. Saving Tristan was the last act of mercy I had in me. For the rest of them, the hammer was about to fall. I received a text from Mateo 10 minutes later. Video attachment. I opened it. It was a shaky cell phone video taken by one of the staff members. It showed 2 local police officers escorting a screaming Juliet and a red-faced Derek out of the villa. Martha was trailing behind them, dragging a suitcase, looking utterly defeated. You can't do this, Juliet was shrieking at the camera. My sister is a millionaire, she'll sue you all. Mateo's voice could be heard off camera. Your sister canceled the contract, madam. You are trespassing. They were loaded into a police van, not for arrest, likely just to be removed from the private property. But the humiliation was absolute. But it wasn't over. They were off the property, but they were still on the island, and they were furious. My phone pinged with a voice note from Derek. I played it. You think you won? His voice was low, menacing. We know where you're staying. I tracked your phone via the family plan you pay for. We're coming to you, Ava. And you're going to fix this, or I'm going to make sure you never work in your industry again. I know secrets about your company, remember? I know about the compliance issue you told me about last Christmas. I froze. He was blackmailing me. He was threatening my career. I stood up, adrenaline flooding my system again. I wasn't just teaching them a lesson anymore. I was at war. Come and get me, I whispered. I grabbed my purse and headed to the lobby. I needed witnesses, and I needed to prepare for the final showdown. The lobby of the Hotel Serenity was a study in understated elegance: polished marble floors, vaulted ceilings, and the soft murmur of jazz playing in the background. It was a sanctuary of peace, which made it the perfect stage for the chaos that was about to arrive. I sat in a high-backed velvet armchair near the center of the room, facing the entrance. My phone was on the table, recording. To my right, hidden slightly by a large potted palm, sat the hotel's head of security, a burly man named Mr. Henderson, whom I had briefed on the situation. I had told him that estranged relatives might arrive to cause a disturbance and that I wanted to handle it verbally before he intervened. He had nodded, crossing his arms, ready to step in at a moment's notice. I didn't have to wait long. At 7:45 p.m., the automatic glass doors slid open, and the humidity of the night spilled into the air-conditioned lobby. Through them walked the wreckage of my family. They looked like refugees from a disaster of their own making. Juliet was sunburnt, her hair frizzy and unkempt, dragging two of the massive suitcases. Derek followed, sweating profusely in a stained polo shirt, carrying a screaming Leo and shoving the third suitcase with his foot. Martha brought up the rear, clutching her handbag to her chest, her face a mask of martyr-like suffering. Heads turned, guests lowered their cocktails, the concierge stiffened. Derek scanned the room, his eyes wild. When he spotted me, a vein in his neck bulged. He handed Leo to Martha without a word and stormed toward me. "You," he seethed, pointing a shaking finger at my face. "You smug, selfish little." "Lower your voice, Derek," I said, not standing up. I crossed my legs and took a sip of my sparkling water. "This is a respectable establishment. Try to act like you belong here." "Don't you dare lecture me on behavior," Juliet screamed, rushing up beside him. "We have been sitting on the curb for 4 hours. The police dumped us at the airport, but we couldn't check in because we don't have tickets. We had to beg a taxi driver to bring us here on the promise that you would pay him." "I won't be paying him," I said calmly. "I suggest you go handle that before he calls the police too." "We aren't here to pay taxis." Derek slammed his hand on the small marble table, making my glass jump. Mr. Henderson shifted in his seat nearby, but I held up a hand to pause him. "We are here to settle this. You are going to call the villa, apologize, and get us back in. Then you are going to transfer $5,000 to my account for the pain and suffering you caused my children today." I looked at him, genuinely fascinated by his delusion. Or what, Derek? He leaned in close, his breath smelling of stale beer and desperation. "Or I make the call. I know about the North Atlantic shipping compliance failure, Ava. I know your company falsified the weight reports to save on customs fees last year. You told me about it when you were drunk at Christmas. One call to the regulatory board, and you're done. No more big salary. No M. Or director title. You'll be in prison." Martha stepped forward, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "Ava, please, don't make him do it, just apologize. He's doing this for the family. We just want what's fair." "Fair," I repeated, looking at my mother. "Fair is me paying for a $25,000 vacation and being told to sleep in the servants' quarters. Fair is you calling me immature while I bankroll your life." "We were stressed," Juliet cried. "We didn't mean it." "You meant every word," I said. Then I turned my gaze back to Derek. "And regarding your threat, Derek, go ahead, make the call." Derek blinked, his smirk faltering. "I'll do it. I'm holding the phone right now." "Do it," I challenged, leaning forward. "Call the Trade Commission. But before you do, you should probably know something. That compliance failure wasn't a secret. I discovered the discrepancy myself during an internal audit 3 days after Christmas. I reported it to the board, we paid the fine, and we rectified the filing. It's public record. My name is on the solution, not the crime, so go ahead. Report me for doing my job." Derek's face went pale. The leverage he thought he held, the silver bullet he had been banking on, was a blank. "But since we're talking about crimes," I continued, my voice hardening into steel, "let's talk about the $4,000 in attempted credit card fraud you committed today, or the theft of fixtures from your previous landlord, Mr. Henderson, not the security guard, but the landlord you robbed, who I spoke to this afternoon. He's very eager to know where you are." You called him," Juliet whispered, horrified. "I built a file, Juliet," I said, standing up now, towering over her in my heels. "I have the logs of every attempt you made to use my identity today. I have the voice note Derek sent threatening me. I have the eviction notice you tried to hide. You didn't come here to negotiate. You came here to surrender." "We are family," Martha wailed, grabbing my arm. "Ava, you can't do this to us. We have nowhere to go. We are homeless." I pulled my arm away from her grip as if she were burning me. "You were homeless before we got on the plane, Mom. You just lied to me about it so I would cushion the fall. You wanted me to be your safety net, but you treated me like a hammock, something to trample on and lay your weight into." "We had a rough year," Derek shouted, trying to regain control, though his eyes darting around the room betrayed his panic. "I was going to pay you back once I got the settlement." "There is no settlement, Derek," I said tiredly. "You were fired for cause, I know that too." The lobby was silent now. The guests were watching openly. The jazz music seemed to have stopped, or maybe I just couldn't hear it over the rushing of blood in my ears. "So here is what is going to happen," I announced, my voice projecting clearly so the witnesses could hear. "I have arranged for one-way economy tickets for all of you back to the States. They leave in 3 hours. A shuttle is waiting outside to take you to the airport. It is prepaid." "Economy," Juliet spat, "with a baby." "If you miss that flight," I continued, ignoring her, "you are stranded. I am blocking you on everything. If you try to contact me, approach me, or threaten me again, I will hand this recording and the fraud file to the local authorities. Do you understand how Caribbean jails treat tourists who steal?" Derek looked at Mr. Henderson, who had finally stood up, his massive frame blocking the exit to the elevators. Derek swallowed hard. "You're a monster," Juliet sobbed, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "You're leaving us with nothing." "I'm leaving you with exactly what you had before you tried to exploit me," I said. "Your own choices." "Get out," Mr. Henderson rumbled, his voice deep and final. "The shuttle is that way." Martha looked at me one last time. I expected an apology. I expected a moment of realization. Instead, she narrowed her eyes, her face twisting into a look of pure, concentrated hate. "You were always a cold, unlovable girl," she hissed. "That's why you're alone. That's why you have to buy people's time." It was the arrow she had been saving for 30 years. It hit the target, but it didn't wound. It just bounced off the armor I had finally forged. "I'd rather be alone in a suite I paid for," I replied softly, "than surrounded by people who only love my wallet. Goodbye, Mother." I turned my back on them. I heard the scuffle of feet, the wheels of the suitcases on the marble, and the heavy slide of the automatic doors. I didn't turn around. I picked up my glass of water, my hand perfectly steady, and took a drink. The flight back home 3 days later was the most peaceful experience of my life. I sat in seat 1A, sipping champagne, watching the clouds roll by. I had spent the remainder of the vacation exactly as I had intended, reading by the Po. All getting a massage and eating fresh seafood in silence. I hadn't cooked a single meal. I hadn't heard a single scream. When I landed, the reality of what I had done, and what I still had to do, set in. But instead of anxiety, I felt a grim sense of purpose. I didn't go home immediately. I went to my lawyer's office. "I want to sever all financial ties," I told him, handing over a thick folder of documents. "I want my name off the joint account I shared with my mother for her medical expenses. I want the authorized user cards canceled, and I want a cease and desist drafted for Derek regarding his threats against my employment." "This is scorched earth, Ava," my lawyer said, peering over his glasses. "Are you sure? Family disputes often blow over." "They stole from me," I said. "They tried to blackmail me. This isn't a dispute, it's a divestment." Over the next month, the fallout was spectacular. Without my financial buffer, Juliet and Derek's house of cards collapsed instantly. They had returned to the States to find that their eviction was finalized. With no rental references, The previous landlord had been vocal about the theft, and no credit. They were forced to move into a cramped, two-bedroom apartment in a rough part of town, co-signed by Derek's reluctant mother. The compliance threat Derek had made turned out to be his own undoing. In his rage, he had posted vague accusations about my company on LinkedIn. My legal team flagged it immediately. Since he had signed a non-disclosure agreement years ago when he did a brief contracting stint for us, a job I had gotten him, we sued him for breach of contract and defamation. He settled out of court. The settlement involved him publicly retracting the statement and admitting he lied. It destroyed whatever professional reputation he had left. As for the credit card fraud, I didn't press criminal charges, mostly for the sake of the children, but the credit card company did. Derek was flagged in the national banking system. He would never be approved for a loan, a mortgage, or a credit card again. He was financially neutered. Martha tried to call me a dozen times. I never answered. She sent letters, long, rambling manifestos written in cursive, alternating between begging for money for her blood pressure medication and cursing me for abandoning her. I put them all in a box, unopened, marked evidence. But the silence was beautiful. 6 weeks after the trip, I was sitting in my living room. It was a Friday night. I had ordered Thai food and was watching a movie. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Tristan. Tristan, hey Aunt Ava, just wanted to say thanks again for the ticket. And the iPad. Things are pretty crazy here. Mom and Dad fight all the time, but I'm okay. Grandma Derek's mom says I can stay with her for the school year. I smiled, typing back. Ava, I'm glad you're safe, Tristan. Keep your grades up. If you need anything for school, books, clothes, you email me directly. Okay. Tristan, thanks. You're the only normal one, you know. I put the phone down and looked around my house. It was quiet, it was clean, it was paid for. For years, I had believed Mom's lie, that my independence was a sign of selfishness, that my success was a barrier to connection. I realized now that my success was the only thing that had protected me. They had wanted me to be a servant in paradise. Instead, I had become the queen of my own life. I took a bite of my pad thai. It tasted like victory. I never did find out exactly what happened to them after that first year. I heard rumors through distant cousins, another eviction, a separation, maybe a bankruptcy. But those were just stories about strangers. I had a new project at work launching on Monday, a date with a charming architect on Tuesday, and a trip to Italy booked for the fall. Solo. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that when I checked into that villa in Tuscany, no one was going to ask me to make them a sandwich.